Well, we've got all of the defense ministers of NATO meeting here in Brussels today, and they are going to be discussing this escalation that we've seen in Russia, these attacks on civilian targets, infrastructure targets that are coming in retaliation for the apparent attack by Ukraine of the Crimean Bridge. There's a lot on the line today. They're going to be meeting in the regular NATO format, so all the NATO countries, the defense ministers from those countries, but then, as you mentioned, on the sidelines, they're also going to be meeting in this Ukraine Defense Contact Group format. That is 50 countries, so that's not just European countries, that's countries all over the world who have taken an interest in this war. The question is, what can they do to help Ukraine when it is coming under attack? Of course, the big focus is on air defense because these are missile strikes. Now, we heard from the U.S. ambassador to NATO yesterday that the U.S. is now going to pivot to air defense systems because they are trying to provide the equipment that's most needed in every exact moment of the war, and so far that has been a lot of land equipment, but now it's air defense equipment. So we know that some of the possibilities there are coming from Germany, from the US, also from Israel. But there's going to be, I think, a wider conversation today also about what comes next, because of course they want to respond to the specific threat that's coming, but then also there is whatever Russia might do next, which could be a ground war. So of course the problem is if they provide Ukraine with just air assistance and then all of a sudden Russia changes its tact, it could leave Russia unprepared for, it could leave Ukraine unprepared for more ground activity.
And Dave, tell us more about what kind of air defense systems NATO countries have and how realistic it is that they could actually get them to Ukraine quickly.
Well, the issue now is there's plenty of money lined up for this military equipment. We had French President Emmanuel Macron last week at the Prague summit just pledge 100 million euros for a new fund for French arms going to Ukraine. The problem is the money doesn't necessarily translate to equipment that can get to Ukraine quickly. France doesn't really have that kind of air equipment to deliver, so we're looking mainly at the US and also Germany. But looking at some of these US systems, it's really unclear whether they could get them to Ukraine and get people trained on these very sophisticated systems in time to make a difference for the current attack. And we've heard grumbling from the Ukraine side that some of this equipment was promised a while ago and still hasn't arrived, and so it left them unprepared. They were able to shoot down a couple of these Russian missiles, but not to any big degree. Interestingly, there's also conversations happening with Israel to see if they could loan them their dome technology, the Iron Dome, that is a missile defense system for Israel. But again, that just doesn't look practical in the short term. So the money is there. Interestingly, we're also having the European Union participate in these talks today. The European Union has, of course, entered into the defense arena here with a large amount of funding for arming Ukraine. But again, it's about steering that money, and that the practical realities on the ground are quite complicated, especially when NATO is expected to reaffirm today that they will not enter this conflict as a belligerent unless Russia attacks a NATO country. So how do you send this equipment to Ukraine without risking getting involved in the war yourself? That's what the defense ministers will be talking about today here in Brussels.
Right, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of those talks. We will be crossing to you for more on that later in the day. Dave Keating, thank you very much from Brussels.